G'day everyone. Recently I've been sent another monitor that I was really interested in looking at. In fact, the other day when I was on a live show with Aaron, the Behind the Photography show, we discussed using things like waveforms and things like that to get really good exposure. And I'm now using those waveforms in nearly all of the exposure that I do with video, because I've found that it's the best way that you can get really critical exposure. The other thing too that you've got the ability here is to use histograms and everything all built inside this monitor. And in fact, I'll take you back to the studio when we look at what this monitor can do, and I'll show you all the things that this monitor can do. So this is from FEELWORLD. So it's a FEELWORLD monitor. It's a 7-inch monitor, but it's really nice, and it's meant to be really bright. I believe it's got 2200 nits. So that's what I was really interested in, because some of the other monitors that I use just aren't bright enough to use out on a sunny day. So I thought we'd have a look at that as well. So what we're going to do now is I'll take you back to the studio and we can have a look and just see all the features that are inside this monitor. Well, now that we're back in the studio, let me give you some information about this monitor, some of the specifications, before I give you a sort of a real-life example of how the unit works. And I'm going to use my model Susie due to the fact that we're in lockdown, so I can't use a real model in here. So I'm going to be using Susie as my model. But there's two models of this. Let me just bring up the web page so I can show you the two different models. There is a LUT7, which is what I've got, and there's also a LUT7S. The only difference between the two is just that one's SDI and one of them is for 4K HDMI. They're both 4K units, but one has SDI and one is just HDMI. I haven't got any SDI attachments, so or interfaces, so I don't need that. I've just got the HDMI model. Just to show you the specifications, what this will give you, it is a 2200 nit unit, which is very, very bright, and I will show a comparison of that against my small Focus HD. And there's also touch screen on this. You've got a 1920 by 1200 resolution. You can put custom LUTs into this unit as well. It does have 4K in and out. Now that's up to 30p. And it also powers your camera. Now you can use an attachment like this, which will power your camera. So you can use something like that, which is your dummy battery, and that will power the camera up from the batteries that are running on the monitor. So that's a great feature. Okay, so let me show you the resolution. So it's 1920 by 1200 resolution. It's a 323 ppi pixel density, a 1200 to 1 contrast ratio, and the viewing angle is 160 degrees by 160 degrees. So that's the viewing angle. And I'll show an example of this, that the 2200 nits is very, very bright. And I'll show you that working outdoors in bright sunlight, and it really is amazing. It does have on the top, there is a dimming button that you can see here that will adapt to the light. So if you moved inside, it will dim it down. If you go outside, it will brighten the image up, which I've found works really well. There is customizable buttons that you can see up the top that you can set to different things, and I'll show those working shortly. This is your touch interface that I'll demo as we're going on. Like I said, it will enable you to put LUTs in as well, and I'll also show you that as well. And you can also completely calibrate this unit as well. So what we'll do now is we'll go into a demo and I'll show you how the unit actually works. So we'll do that now. Okay, so let's have a look at how this works, and I'll just show you that you can click and zoom in through here. Then you could check critical focus if you wanted to. So that's a great way of making sure whatever you're interested in is totally in focus, and then you can scroll back out. If I scroll up from the bottom, you can see that there's some quick sort of settings here that you can use. Like for instance, if I wanted to say turn my grid on, I can just turn it on like that or turn it off. If I wanted a safety marker, I can click through here and click that through there. You've got all your settings up the top. If I wanted to have the center marker, I can turn the center marker on or off. Your marker mats there as well. False color is through here. Like I can just turn that on as well. And I've also got a LUT switch. Now I'll talk about these on the other side in a second. So they're sort of quick settings that you can change. If you want to move here, you can turn the volume up and down. If I want to move on this side, it will bring the backlight up and down as well, which is great. Now if I click like in the center or anywhere around there, it brings the main menu in, which is on the left-hand side over here. So I'll take you through some of these tools. So the top ones are your focus assist and also your zebras and things like that. So if I turn on the focus assist, you'll see now that it's all come in yellow. Now there's different levels that you can choose. So I can come into here and choose different levels. And I'll show you how that works. And you can also change the color as well, so depending on what you'd want to go to, reds or yellows or whites or anything like that. Now how that works is if I then go out of focus, you'll see that they'll disappear. If I then bring it back into focus, you'll see that it goes quite strong. Now I've got them quite thick. You don't have to be that thick. I'm just doing it so you can see it very easily. Let me just double click to get back out of that, and I'll turn the focus assist off. You've also got zebras here as well, and you can determine your value there. Now you'll have to work out what your value is by doing some testing, but to show you how that works is if I click through here and bring the exposure up, you'll see that the zebras now are starting to show. As I bring them down and they'll disappear, that will give you your correct exposure to, well, depending on what you set your zebras at. So let me just come back in and turn the zebras off. You can also go into monochrome as well if you'd like to test your colors that way. And you can also use the red channel, green channel and blue channel. So you've got a lot of control over that as well. False color is great. That will determine by this bar that you see down the bottom, this bar sort of graph that you're seeing there, which is 0 exposure down here up to 100 plus on this side. Now depending on what you'd like to set your exposure for, say the skin tones for instance, like you may want to set your skin tones at 70 IRE. So if you do that, you can see that that's in that grey area. So if I adjust the exposure through here, you'll see that if I bring the exposure up, it gets brighter, so it's starting to go into this level, which is overexposed. And if I bring it down there, you can sort of see then that I'm around that 70 IRE, which means I will be exposed correctly if that's the setting that you wanted to use for that as well. So it's, you know, it's really quite powerful. There's two different versions of that you can use as well. Let's go down to the next box, which is here, your markers. So you've got your grids that you can use for composition, and you can also use this if you want to say rules of thirds, like put your main interest on the intersecting lines. Let me turn that off. You've got safety markers as well. That was more used for the television days when you wanted to make sure that things weren't outside of that area, so you could shoot safely. You've got center marks that you can use, and there's marker mats as well. Now these are good if you're, say, shooting in other formats or other sizes, like if you want to go to cinematic, for instance. Like if I wanted 235-1, you can then see that mat inside there, so you could shoot exactly to suit that, and that's a real help because I often do shoot at that ratio because I think it looks very filmic. Particularly when I do weddings and things like that. Let me just come back to here. I'll turn that back to auto or off. And you can determine what those marker colors are and things like that as well. Now there's also a whole section on the left-hand side as well that you can change to do things like your scanning mode, your video aspect ratio can be changed through here. You've also got anamorphic modes that you can change as well through this, and you can see here that you can go normal images up to 2 times magnification, but basically you need an anamorphic lens to be able to do this as well. You can flip your images as well, like your normal image. You can flip horizontal, vertical, and horizontal and vertical as well through this menu. You can even go pixel to pixel, and that's basically saying you enable the filmmaker to check the image from the one-to-one signal source without scaling. This feature is essential for capturing optimal detail as well. So you've got a really an amazing amount of options on that left-hand side that you can use. Under the color settings here, though, you've got a lot of control. Like you can put all the waves on if you wanted to. So that's showing you all your waves that you've got on, and I'm going to go through these and sort of show what they are in a second individually. That's if you wanted to see everything in the monitor in one go. But you can, if you want to, I'll just turn these off. So you can turn, say, the parade on if you'd like to do it that way. Now, there's different ones of this at the moment. You can see that that's showing you red, green, and blue channel. If you wanted to go, you can also show you Y, UV, and there's also Y. I often do leave it on Y because I don't like to see the color information. I just like to see the exposure. And you'll notice as I turn this up or down, you can see how that's reflecting what happening in the exposure. You can see Susie in the middle here is this part here. So these are very, very helpful in getting you correct exposure. Let me just come back to here. I'll just turn these off. Vector, you can bring up as well. So this is also great if you want to check for things like skin tones and things like that, which is really nice. I'll just show you with all of them on so you can see that dial. So you can see it over here. And basically what this does, it shows how saturated the image is and where the pixel in the image lands in the color spectrum. And like I said, that way you can check. It's great for getting your skin tones correct and things like that. So that's what that is. So that's your vector one. You've got an RGB histogram that you can see through here. You can turn it on or off, which is great. That's good too, because if you wanted to check, say, your white balance or something like that, you can see if one color is giving a cast or something like that. You can also put your histogram on or off, and that tells you your highlights on this side, your shadows on that side. You'll see as we increase exposure that it will go up to the left-hand side. Now, if it disappears past this yellow line, that means it's clipping, and that's your shadow end down there as well. So that's always great to use, and I use that all the time. Let me turn the histogram off. And you've got an audio meter that you can turn on. Now that will show you my audio that's actually coming through here. Now that's from the camera, so that's your audio there as well, which is great. You get your levels that show through here. And I'll leave that on actually for the moment. Let me come over to this, and this is how you can calibrate your screen and put LUTs in. So you can see you can have LUTs on or off. At the moment it's saying V-log. You can have S-log. There's S-log 3 logic. For instance, if I wanted log 2. Now you can see this is not correct because I'm not running log from the camera. But there is S-log built into these if you wanted to choose it. But you can also bring your own LUTs in as well if you wanted to. Where you can see here it says LUT import of the SD card. So you can bring them in as well. Let me just switch the LUTs off. The good thing about that is you'll, instead of looking at the back of the camera, which may look wrong, if you load the LUT in and you're using a LUT, you'll see it correct on this monitor. You can set your color temperature here through the monitor as well. You can have backlight mode, so you can change this if you'd like to manual or auto. There's a little light on the top or a diode that will check the light for you. Brightness, contrast, saturation, hue and sharpness you can change, so you can completely calibrate this monitor. At the moment, it's just on its default, so I haven't done any of that yet. Now, this is your little dialog box here where you can control other things, like set your volume, language, and also your quick keys up the top. You can sort of set those at the moment. Like at the moment, I've got that, so it will turn off the audio. The next one down here, we'll just go to your monochrome. Change. These are the defaults, so I'll have to play around and see which ones I want to change and what I'd like at the top there. That will bring your scopes all off and on. And like I said, if you wanted to, that's all changed through here as well. So it's a really, really nice little monitor. It also shows you what you're running through your resolution up the top there as well, and you can see there's a battery indicator that's there as well. So yeah, I think it's really fantastic. Okay, so what we'll do now, I'll show a working example about how bright this unit is, say against the small HD focus, which I think is 800 nits. And you'll see how much brighter the FEELWORLD monitor is in daylight working conditions. The only sort of issue is that it's a little bit glossy in the screen, but I found that you could still use it really easily. And in fact, eventually I suppose you're going to be able to get a hood on it or something like that, which would make this really wonderful to use. But it was still very, very workable compared to what the small HD focus was. So we'll have a look at that now. Okay, so what I'm going to show you here is the difference between these two monitors. So I've got a FEELWORLD monitor on the left-hand side, and I've got a small HD on the other side. And this is going to show you the difference that the nits make in how these work. Now, the small HD is turned up full, and they're both in the sun here. In fact, the small HD is in a little bit of shade, so you can see the difference between how these two monitors will work. The FEELWORLD one on this side even has all the parades and everything showing up. It's on this side where you can see the waveform, but you can't even hardly see it, and the colors look completely different. Now, This may, like I said, I haven't touched anything on this yet. It hasn't had calibration or anything. This can be all adjusted, and I can bring the tones down a little bit. But this is more, like I said, this is just its default state. I'm trying to show you here the difference in intensity. Like, this is workable in bright sun. You can see my shadow on the camera down the bottom here, how much sun this is in. The only issue, I suppose, is that it does have a lot of reflective qualities about the front of this panel, so that's something you would have to worry about, I suppose. But if you're looking at it from just getting focus, checking your exposures correct, and using it in bright sunlight, this FEELWORLD at 2200 nits is really, really strong and really, really bright. And compared to this one, I thought initially that this was the wrong color, but then when I took it in the shade, the colors came back in. It's just the reflection making this one look a hell of a lot dimmer than what this one does, or a hell of a lot more sort of taking the saturation out of it. So it's really good, and I'm really pleased with how this works. And in fact, this would be fantastic in weddings, because I would really be able to see the bride in a bright sunny day through this monitor. Okay, so let's talk about the build quality of this unit. Now, it is a plastic. I mean, you can't expect this to be made of metal at the price range that you're talking about with this monitor, but it seems to be reasonably well made. I mean, quite nice plastic that's being used. All the buttons feel like they've got a nice sort of resistance to them, which is nice. There is your two HDMI points, one in and one out, so you can have, say, 4K going in and 4K going out if you were using it that way. There's a microphone socket here, so you can plug your microphone in. That's great in case if you're using, say, cameras like the A6400 that don't have a microphone input. You've got your on and off button here as well, and you can attach the arm. Now, it comes with this arm that will go directly onto the camera, and I'll show that in a minute. You've got two batteries that can be put into this, so if one runs out, it will then go onto the other one, so that's fantastic as well. And let's attach it just so I can show you how it connects to the unit. So all it does is you just undo this bottom part, stick it into your camera, tighten that down, and then this gives you the ability then to move it around, so you can sort of go up or down if you wanted to go that way. Like I said, I have found a little bit, there is quite a bit of reflection off the monitor, but the monitor is so bright that when you're using it outdoors, you don't really notice it that much. I found that it's still very, very usable. It would be great if they could develop some sort of a hood, though, system to go around this, which would be great. But it's a really, really nicely made monitor for the price that you're paying. So let me know what you think about it. I think it's a really great unit for the price particularly. If you have any questions, leave them down below. I will stick the link down below as well, in case if you wanted to purchase this. FEELWORLD did send me this. Like I say, I'm always honest with you guys, but I would always tell you the truth about how it works. So I'd like to thank them for sending it to me. And apart from that, guys, I'll see you all in the next video. Bye for now.